Some of you had good points about the last video. Nice idea, but it's too wobbly. Will those clips actually hold? Why not just use pegboards or SCADIs or OpenGrid or MultiBoard or French cleats? And honestly, those are all fair questions and comments. So today I want to do a proper follow-up on the MetalGrid. But even if you don't plan to use this exact system, stick around. Because this is not only about this wall. There are a few design principles here that apply to almost any 3D printed mounting system, and even to how to design and print models. How to increase strength, how to think about print orientation, how to avoid weak layer lines, and how to design parts that are easy to put on but hard to knock off. So, quick recap. The original problem was simple. I didn't want to print square meters of MultiBoard or OpenGrid panels. They are a great system, but printing the wall itself takes a lot of time. Check out this and this video about the MetalGrid and the painful process about printing storage walls. My idea was to use something that already exists as the structure, this cheap metal wire grid. At least where I live, in Brazil, these are very inexpensive, about $7 for a 60 by 100 centimeters grid. Then I only need to print the adapters, the clips, and the custom parts. And these are actually accessories for MultiBoard or OpenGrid that use multi-connect. So instead of using the 3D printer to create the whole wall, I'm using it for what I think it does best, making the custom interface between an existing material and the accessories I already want to use. Now, what do I actually plan to hang on this? Small tools, hardware bins, pliers, screwdrivers, cables, maybe some small boxes, maybe some filament or light accessories. Will it hold a 10 kilo chainsaw? Probably not, or at least not safely. But I don't have a chainsaw in my apartment, and second, because it's not what it's meant for. For my use case, I'm thinking somewhere between 500 grams and 1 kilo per mounting point is what I feel safe with it. That is the kind of load I actually need for something like this, and the things that I actually want to organize here. I'm actually planning to put French cleats on another wall. This wall here is drywall. The other wall is brick, so that one I can hang myself on. Now let's talk about the wobble. Yes, it wobbles, as you can see. If I push it around, it moves. The grid itself has some flex and the clips have some play. But is that really a problem? Because I'm not standing around here the whole day shaking the wall. Most of the times the accessories stay in place. I take the tool out, I put the tool back, and the holder itself doesn't really need to move. And honestly, I think that's true for a lot of the wall systems. MultiBoard and OpenGrid are modular, yes. You can move things around, but most of the time you design a layout, you customize it for your needs, and you use it for a while, and maybe you change it later. You don't really keep changing things around after you find your sweet spot. The things I move all the time are usually inside a holder or inside a Gridfinity bin. That said, the first clips were not perfect. You pointed that out and you were right. The original version had these two little ridges inside the channels to prevent the clip from being knocked out. It worked, but it was not ideal. It still had more play than I wanted, and the locking motion was too simple. Basically, if it can go in one straight motion, it can also come out in one straight motion. So I redesigned it. The first improvement was making a shorter clamp. The original long clamp grabs two wires, which helps with stability, but it also sticks down quite a lot with smaller bins and holders. And I realized something: if the accessory itself is wide enough or tall enough, it will be touching the neighboring wires, and that already prevents it from moving around. So not every mount needs to clamp across two wires to be stable on the board. For smaller accessories, the shorter clamp is cleaner, uses less material, and doesn't stick out as much. The second improvement is the more important one, the new anti-knockout channel. Instead of two simple ridges directly opposite to one another, I made a channel more like a zigzag. So to remove the clip, it doesn't just slide straight out, it has to move back, then forward, then out. And this works much better than I expected. It still locks to the wire without too much trouble, but it's much harder to accidentally knock it off. That is exactly what I wanted. Easy enough to install, but annoying enough to remove that it won't happen by accident. Now, this is where the 3D printing design part gets challenging and also interesting. On the short clamp, I can print the part in an orientation that lets me shape those little internal hooks in the ideal direction. They act almost like a fish hook, easier in, harder out. But on the long clamp, this is more complicated. I could print the long clamp lying down, and that way I can replicate this fish hook design, but then the rail holds the accessories mostly relying on layer adhesion. And I don't love that, because the load is pulling against the layers. If I print it standing up, the rail is much stronger because the perimeters run in a better direction to hold the load. But then I can't make the same hook shape as easily because I will have floating parts when I print. And I would need a lot of support. That is an important point for functional 3D printing. Sometimes the best part is not the prettiest part. Sometimes the best part is the one that prints reliably, holds the load in the right direction, and does its job. So where does this system actually make sense? I think it makes sense when you have a lot of light to medium weight things to organize. Small tools, pliers, calipers, screwdrivers, pens, cables, small hardware bins, little boxes of screws, maybe a small camera accessories. Things where you want a lot of flexibility and a lot of wall coverage, but you don't want to spend days printing the boards themselves. It makes less sense for very heavy tools, big shelves, or anything where appearance is the main priority. If this is in a nice office or in the living room or somewhere you care about aesthetics, maybe SCADIs or OpenGrid or MultiBoard might be better. They are more polished and they are more like a finished product. If you want maximum modularity and precision, then MultiBoard and OpenGrid may be better also. They are designed system precision engineered and the spacing is controlled because you printed the whole structure. And if you want cheap and simple, pegboard can be great. It has been around forever for a reason. And if you want to hang heavy stuff, maybe the French cleats are probably the best solution. So I don't see this as replacing all of those systems. I see this more as another option. The interesting thing about this MetalGrid is that the open 50mm spacing gives me a lot of freedom. With pegboards or SCADIs, the holes are fixed. If your accessories doesn't match that spacing, you need an adapter or totally different design. With this grid, I have more room to slide, position and adapt things. That makes it surprisingly versatile, especially for accessories based on multi-connect or similar mounting rails. So there are already a lot of models out there that I can simply download and use. I don't need to design everything myself. Now, a lot of you also pointed out that these grids are not cheap everywhere. And that is true. Where I live, they are dirt cheap, around $7 per panel. At that price, it's very hard for printed panels to compete. But in some places, people said that these cost much more. In that case, this exact idea may not make a lot of sense, and that's fine also. The real point here is not to, like, this is a solution for everybody. The real point is look at what is cheap, strong, and available where you live, and then use 3D printing to adapt to it. That might be wire grid, it might be a pegboard, it might be SCADIs, it might be French cleats, it might be something else entirely. The printer doesn't always need to make the whole solution, sometimes it only needs to make the missing part. So that is where I am with the project now. The system is not perfect, it wobbles, it has its limits. I will not use it for everything. But for the things I actually want to store on this wall, I think it makes a lot of sense. And with these new clips, especially the shorter clamp and the zigzag anti-knockout version, I'm much happier with it. If you like this kind of practical workshop design, please like this video and subscribe. I have more vertical storage ideas I want to test over the next weeks. And one more thing. If you want me to make a proper destructive load test, make sure to like and subscribe. Once this channel is monetized, I will use all the proceeds from the ads to make new videos. Maybe push it until something fails and see what breaks first, the clip, the grid, or the wall mounting. Thanks for watching and let me know what you would like me to test next. Heavier loads, different clips, smaller grid spacing, or compatibility with other systems.